Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring the life and tragic death of Amy Harwick.
Yeah.
It's a story that I think sadly illustrates a much larger issue, and our main source material today is going to be an article called Amy Harwick's Tragic End: Love, Passion, and a Deadly Betrayal.
Right.
And I think even if her name rings a bell, this deep dive, I think, will go beyond just the headlines to understand
Yeah.
what made Amy so special and what lessons her story holds, I think, for all of us.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember, before the tragedy, Amy had built this incredibly vibrant life.
Right.
The article really emphasizes her impact as a licensed marriage and family therapist
Mm.
and how she was, deeply committed to helping her clients navigate difficult emotions and life challenges.
Yeah, there's this really powerful anecdote in the article about one of Amy's clients who credits her support and guidance for completely turning their life around.
Wow.
And, it sounds like she had a real talent for creating a safe space for healing and growth.
Mm.
But, it wasn't just her professional life that was remarkable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Outside of therapy, Amy was this whirlwind of creative energy.
Yeah.
The article mentions her fire-eating performances.
Wow.
Talk about a unique hobby,
Yeah.
along with dancing at concerts, photography, and even modeling.
Wow.
It seems like she was constantly seeking new experiences and pushing her own boundaries.
It's almost like she lived several lives in one,
Right?
which makes the dark turn her story takes even more shocking.
Yeah.
The article introduces us to Gareth Pursehouse, Amy's ex-boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
and it describes their initial connection as full of promise, but
Yeah.
you quickly start to see cracks beneath the surface.
Yeah, and this is where the article's insights into toxic relationships become really crucial.
Okay.
Instead of simply labeling the relationship as bad, it highlights the subtle ways abuse can manifest.
Yeah.
At first, it might be disguised as intense passion or protectiveness,
Yeah.
making it difficult to spot the warning signs.
Yeah, some might even wonder, well, why didn't she just leave if things were so bad? Right.
But it's rarely that simple, is it?
Not at all. Abusers often employ tactics like gaslighting,
Right.
where they manipulate the victim into doubting their own sanity,
Oh.
and isolation, gradually cutting them off from their support network.
Hmm.
This can leave the victim feeling trapped, confused, and entirely dependent on the abuser.
And it sounds like Amy's friends and family did notice subtle changes in her as the relationship progressed.
Right.
But unless someone is explicitly confiding in you about abuse, it can be hard to know how to intervene,
Yeah,
especially when the abuser presents a charming and charismatic front to the outside world.
that's such an important point. Abuse thrives in secrecy.
Right.
It's often only after a tragedy occurs that those around the victim realize the extent of the manipulation and control that was happening behind closed doors.
Mm.
But thankfully, Amy did eventually find the strength to break free from the relationship.
Yeah, the article mentions a restraining order, which tells you just how fearful she was, even after ending things with Gareth.
Yeah. This wasn't just a messy breakup. She genuinely felt threatened.
Right.
And this is where things get incredibly chilling because on February 15th, 2020, that fear became a terrifying reality.
The article describes Amy's roommate, Michael Herman, being awakened by a struggle coming from Amy's room.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine being jolted awake in the middle of the night to those sounds. It sends shivers down your spine just thinking about it.
The article doesn't hold back on the horrifying details.
Yeah.
Michael described hearing Amy scream and then desperately trying to reach her,
Right.
only to find the doors and windows barricaded from the inside.
Wow.
That sense of helplessness he must have felt.
It's just heartbreaking.
No.
And the sounds he described, the struggle, the muffled cries, paint such a vivid and terrifying picture of what Amy must have been going through.
He managed to escape to a neighbor's and call 911,
Okay.
but by the time first responders arrived, it was almost too late.
Wow.
They found Amy barely clinging to life.
And despite being rushed to the hospital, she tragically succumbed to her injuries. It's a stark reminder that domestic violence is not just a personal issue. It's a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as the investigation unfolded, all signs kind of pointed to Gareth Pursehouse.
Right.
The broken window, blood at the scene, and that syringe found on Amy's balcony. They all added up.
Yeah.
But what really struck me was the article mentioning that the syringe was filled with heroin, something Michael insisted Amy never used.
Oh, wow.
And it felt like a deliberate attempt to mislead the investigation.
Yeah, it's a tactic we unfortunately see all too often in cases of domestic violence.
Right.
Abusers often try to manipulate the narrative, even after the fact, to shift blame or cast doubt on the victim's character.
Right.
It's a chilling reminder that the abuse doesn't always end with the relationship.
And it makes you wonder if this was a pattern for Gareth, even during their relationship.
Yeah.
Did he use similar tactics to undermine her, to make her question herself?
It's certainly possible. The article highlights Gareth's controlling and manipulative behavior, his jealousy and possessiveness. These traits often go hand in hand with a need to exert power and control, even through deception.
Which makes his behavior when confronted by the police all the more telling.
Right.
The article describes him as uncooperative,
Right.
offering these strange, almost nonsensical excuses and constantly trying to deflect blame.
It's classic abuser behavior. They often lack accountability, minimizing their actions and refusing to acknowledge the harm they've caused.
Right.
They may even try to portray themselves as the victim, claiming they were provoked or that the situation was blown out of proportion.
The article even mentions a detail about Gareth having a black eye when he was brought in for questioning.
Oh, wow.
He claimed it was from a fall, but it just adds another layer of suspicion to his already flimsy story.
Right. And those inconsistencies, along with the physical evidence and witness testimony, ultimately led to Gareth being charged with Amy's murder. But even with an arrest, there's no undoing the immense pain and loss caused by this tragedy.
The article really brings that pain to life when it talks about Amy's adoptive parents, Penny and Tom Harwick, and reading their memories of her, from a little girl with curly hair who loved rock music to a successful therapist who touches so many lives. It just breaks your heart.
It underscores the ripple effect of domestic violence.
Yeah.
It's not just the immediate victim who suffers, it's their entire network of loved ones who are left to grapple with the trauma and the unanswered questions.
It makes you think about all the things Amy will never get to experience, all the people she won't be able to help.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to this idea that her story, as tragic as it is, has the power to spark real change.
That's where the true value of this deep dive lies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about understanding the specifics of Amy's case, but about using her story as a catalyst for greater awareness and action when it comes to domestic violence.
It's about recognizing those red flags we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The subtle signs of control and manipulation. And understanding that abuse can take many forms. It's not always physical.
And it's about challenging the societal norms that often silence victims and protect abusers.
Right.
We need to create a culture where people feel empowered to speak up, to seek help, and to know that they are not alone.
It feels like we often hear these stories and think that would never happen to me or someone I know.
Right.
But the reality is that domestic violence is far more prevalent than we might realize.
Absolutely.
So what can we do to shift that mindset and move towards real prevention?
Well, I think a crucial step is understanding the cycle of violence.
Okay.
The article touches on this briefly, but it's worth diving deeper.
Okay.
There's often a tension-building phase where control and manipulation increase,
Right.
followed by an acute explosion of violence, and then a honeymoon phase,
Right.
where the abuser apologizes, promises to change, and might even shower the victim with affection.
Wow.
And this cycle can repeat itself over and over,
Yeah.
making it incredibly difficult for someone to break free.
And that cycle feeds into the societal factors that often contribute to domestic violence.
Right.
We have these deep-rooted beliefs about gender roles and power dynamics and what constitutes a private matter that can prevent people from intervening or seeking help.
Exactly. We need to challenge those beliefs and create a culture where it's unacceptable to turn a blind eye to abuse.
Right.
Whether it's happening to a friend, family member, or even a stranger.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play in breaking the silence.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well,
What are some concrete steps our listeners can take to make a difference?
first and foremost, educate yourself.
Okay.
Learn about the signs of domestic violence, the different forms it can take, and the resources available to help.
Okay.
The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to recognize it and offer support.
And if you suspect someone might be experiencing abuse, don't be afraid to reach out.
Right.
Even a simple check-in, letting them know you're there for them, can make a world of difference.
And remember, supporting someone experiencing abuse doesn't always mean trying to fix the situation.
Right.
It's about listening without judgment, believing their story, and respecting their choices.
Okay.
Sometimes the safest and most empowering thing you can do is simply offer a safe space and validate their feelings.
Yeah, the article doesn't delve into specific resources,
Right.
but I think it's important for our listeners to know that there are hotlines, shelters, support groups, legal aid organizations,
Absolutely.
a whole network of people dedicated to helping those affected by domestic violence.
Yes.
We'll be sure to include some links in the show notes.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And remember, seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Mm-hmm.
There is no shame in reaching out for support.
Amy's story is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of silence and inaction.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the power of speaking up, of seeking help, and of creating a world where abuse is no longer tolerated.
Though her life was tragically cut short, Amy's legacy lives on in the work being done to prevent future tragedies. By learning from her story, by sharing our knowledge, and by supporting each other,
Hmm.
we can help create a safer and more just world for everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this deeply important deep dive.
Absolutely.
We hope it's inspired you to reflect on the warning signs we've discussed
Yes.
and consider how you can contribute to creating a world free from domestic violence. Remember, even small acts of awareness and support can make a big difference.